Hi, my name is Tim Hesford, and today I will be telling the story of Captain John Smith's voyage up the Chesapeake Bay as told by James A. Michener in his novel Chesapeake. On a cold, blustery day in mid-December, 1606, Captain John Smith, a short, opinionated little man with a beard and a fiery temper, assembled 7 daring gentlemen on a dock in the Blackwall section of London. Addressing them in crisp terms, he said, "I have brought you to inspect the vessels in which we shall conquer Virginia." And he showed them the 3 small ships that would carry them across the Atlantic: the Susan Constant, the Godspeed, and the Discovery. "Sturdy vessels," he cried, snapping his words as if issuing a command. Then, drawing himself to maximum height, he saluted the boat. He was 26 that winter, difficult, vain, unbearingly ambitious. He had, by his own account, already survived the dangers that would have destroyed an ordinary man. He was a mercenary in the most brutal years of the German wars, a heroic defender of Christianity. He was a captured slave held in a Turkish dungeon, a foot traveler to Muscovy and Madrid in Spain, and now he surveyed his fleet on the eve of his final adventure: the establishment of a new colony, the subjugation of a new world. Fast forward 2 years to 1608, and Smith and his crew are in Jamestown, the first English settlement in America. "Infuriating," he growled one day in July 1608. "3 years ago I heard all the facts for myself. Silver more common than copper, kitchen pans and bedroom pots made of pure gold, rubies and diamonds in the street, children gathering pearls along the streams. The riches are here, if only we can find them." Smith and his crew had already made a few expeditions up the bay, but neither of them have produced the gold and jewels promised, as well as a passage to India or China. On Saturday, August 9th, 1608, he outlined his plan for his primary mission. "The gold lies, I am convinced, in towns hidden along the eastern shore of the bay, and there we shall explore most carefully. The passage to India probably starts on the northern tip, so after we've found our gold, we shall probe north to identify the passage, then return to Jamestown with our profits." Among the men in his crowd stood Edmund Steed. Steed had not participated in Smith's 2 earlier explorations. He had been selected for one particular purpose. The captain had not been entirely pleased with the narrative reports of his first journeys. They had been accurate, but according to him they paid insufficient attention to his moral and heroic qualities. This time, he was determined that his accomplishments and deeds would not go undocumented. As the crew left Jamestown behind, Steed took careful notes of the boat they sailed on. No decking, no refuge from storms, barrels and barrels of bread already turning sour, and a small batch of dried meats littered with worms. The only upside was the boat had a large supply of fishing lines. "There'll be plenty of fish," Smith assured his rowers. If the gentlemen felt any apprehension about exploring with such inadequate gear, their captain did not. His buoyancy was remarkable, and when the ship responded nicely to the wind, he cried, "Fairly launched, it'll be a famous journey." Smith wrote down these remarks, along with others, on a folded sheet he carried in a canvas bag. Later that night, he transferred them over to a proper journal, which Smith seized as soon as it was completed. He did not like what he saw. "Mr. Steed, at the beginning of our heroic journey, you had me saying, 'We shall be gone 30 days,' and at the end you'll wish it would have been 90. That's a poor speech for the launching of a great adventure." "Well, it's what you said, sir," Steed replied. "I know, but our time on shore is brief, and you must take that into consideration." He grabbed the pen from the scribe, and for some time sat beneath the lantern comprising a more appropriate opening address. When the captain handed the paper back to the scribe, Steed responded, bewildered, "You never said those things, Captain." To which Smith responded, "I was thinking them. Had there been time, I'd have said them." With a flourish, the crew continued up the bay, exploring the Nanticoke and Wacomico rivers. During a trade expedition with the Nanticoke people, Smith learned that a great river to the north, with a city full of gold, existed under the control of the Choptank people. This city was known as Patamoke. So the ship sailed north, with a crew of excited explorers. And when the broad river was sighted, Smith cried, "This is our Choptank. Here is Patamoke, city of gold." That evening, the ship anchored well into the Choptank, under the protection of a great white cliff. And while one group of men tried to catch fish, a party of natives appeared in the two canoes, announcing in sign language that their werewolves desired the leader of the strangers to accompany them to their capital city, where they would be welcome. Towards dawn, Smith made his decision about this encounter. He told us simply, "I must go to the city of Patamoke, for it is where we shall find the gold." No argument would be made to dissuade him, and when the light broke, he nominated Ragnall and Steed to accompany him. As we climbed into the waiting canoe, Thomas Mumford cried, "Take care, Captain," and Smith replied, "A captain must never fear to meet another captain." The short trip from the cliff was one of excitement, for Smith could smell the gold in the city, and in his anticipation he told Steed, "When they meet us with a great procession, I will go first, and you will march behind me with Ragnall in proper form. This will impress them with our military bearing." Steed took notes of what actually happened. After passing a large marsh filled with birds and brushes, we approached our desired goal, the city of Patamoke, headquarters of the powerful Choptanks. When they arrived to the village, the captain saw only a circle of wigwams, a mound of oyster shells, and nothing more. He looked at his companions blankly. No gold, no silver, no pearls, no rubies, no emeralds. Not only was the village lacking in dignity, but the people were as well. Except for one tall, broad-shouldered man with turkey feathers in his hair. This man was known as Pinktacood. Captain Smith was disappointed with his trip to the village. However, he felt that he must go through the motions of exploration. So he produced from his bag an assortment of items for trade. Glass beads from Venice, an iron hatchet, cloth, tools, and finally for the werewolves, a compass. The young man took it in his hands, moved in circles, and watched as the needle danced home to its assigned position. He was bewildered. Then Smith spoke. Not knowing a word of their language, he used a minimum of gestures to indicate the sky and stars which formed the Great Dipper. His gestures were incomprehensible to the young werewolves and pretty much anyone else watching, but to the giant with the turkey feathers in his hair, it was beginning to make sense. The man suddenly reached for his stick and drew in the dust the 7 stars of the Great Dipper. "Yes," Smith explained, pointing to the heavens. Further explanation was not needed, for the man had already concluded that the needle saw north. A feast was held at noon, with bear meat and crab cakes, after which Captain Smith dispatched Ragnall back to the ship to let the crew know that all was well. When they returned to the ship, Steed faced the task of describing the adventure in his journal. He wanted to be accurate, and to report the quality of the village as well as the kindness of the people. Yet he knew that he also must display Captain Smith in a heroic manner, which proved difficult. When the captain read his accounts, he could not hide his displeasure. "You spend too few words on our departure," Smith said. "You must recall that for you were involved, what a risky business we undertook. It is by no means an easy task for 3 men to go unarmed into the heart of hostile Indian territory." Steve was about to say that he had never seen people less hostile, Indian or not, but he deemed it wiser to keep his silence. Passing the pages over to the captain, he held the lantern so that Smith could edit them, and after a while he was handed this. "We were now entering the most considerable river on the eastern shore, the river of the Choptanks. After we proceeded a good distance up the river, we were accosted by a group of fierce and hostile Indians. The captain hatched a bold plan, demanding they lead him to their village. Smith was determined to meet the werewolves and trade for the food we needed, so he assembled men and told them, the wise Machiavelli in his instruction to princes has properly said that men, iron, money, and bread are the necessities of war. But of these 4, the first 2 be of most importance, because men and iron can find bread and money, but bread and money can never find men and iron. Therefore the captain stepped forward boldly and cried, 'Take me to Patamoke.' We climbed into the enemy's canoe and went to meet the werewolves of the Choptanks. He was a man named Mattapank, of little consequence, but in a devious manner he masked a real leader, one Pinktacood, no brighter than he, but stood tall and broad-shouldered. The pair were most disposed to harm us, but Captain Smith spoke with signs and gave them a compass encased in ivory, which amused them, especially that they could see through the glass but not touch it, although they were all incapable of understanding what the compass did. When Steve read this dumbfounding report, he had no idea where to begin. He knew that Pinktacood was brighter than Smith. Smith hated the clever Choptank because the Indian was so tall and he was so very short. He wanted Pinktacood to appear stupid. but it did gall the Oxford student to have Smith quoting Machiavelli to inspire his men. Nervously, he questioned the captain. "I heard no Machiavelli in your speech." "Well," Smith replied, "the Indians were pressing, and I had not the time. If a captain leads his men into strange waters against a strange enemy, is it wise for him to think of Machiavelli?" Steed stared at the bottom boards, barely discernible in the darkness, but Smith was not content. "Tell me, Mr. Steed, why would I have gone into the canoe almost alone and ventured into the enemy camp? Men and iron obtain food. It is never the other way around. I insist that you make one more change to your story. In your account of our departure with the Indians, I want you to write that you volunteered most gallantly, sir." "But you commanded me to go," Steed replied. "Well, if I had not, you would have volunteered, because you, like me, are a man of iron," said Smith. "Mr. Steed, at the moment when I met the Indian with the turkey feather, must you emphasize that he is so tall and I am so short?" Smith replied after a long, extended period of silence between the two. This time, Steed wisely replied, "My description wasn't gracious, and I will gladly change it for you, Captain." I thought this story highlighted the nature of the interactions between the settlers of the 16 and 1700s and the Native Americans living on the East Coast of the time pretty well. I think that through that relationship, the author was able to kind of express two worldviews as well. One where you have Captain Smith, very ambitious man, greedy, hungry for power, arrogant, self-righteous, and then on the other hand you have Pinktacoo, the chief of the Choptanks, who's a very wise man, very humble, lived in a very quaint but comfortable-looking village, and lived happily off the land and appreciated everything the bay had to offer. I think the story does a good job of using Steed as kind of a medium to display these two worldviews as a kind of an unbiased figure.